Are there policies in place that try to insulate the investigations and the decisions of the Department of Justice and FBI from getting involved in elections?
Yes, Senator, there are.
And why is that?
Well, obviously, because the incumbent party has their hands on the among other reasons, they have their hands on the levers of the law enforcement apparatus of the country, and you don't want it used against the opposing political party.
That was Attorney General William Barr at a Senate confirmation hearing, saying the AG's office should not delve into presidential politics. More than a little bit of irony in his comments, since Barr has been one of the most political attorney generals in recent memory. He misconstrued the Mueller report to say it totally cleared President Trump. By the way, it didn't. Barr also intervened in the Roger Stone and Michael Flynn cases to help out allies of the president who were convicted of felonies. In fact, Flynn's case was back in court yesterday as appellate judges are now reviewing whether or not to totally dismiss the case. A few months ago, prosecutors dropped it, but it's subject to review because of just how politically charged the whole process has been. My next guest recently co-wrote an opinion piece in the New York Times that raises some questions about whether or not the DOJ could sway the election by taking actions close to Election Day. We recently spoke with Ryan Goodman, co-editor-in-chief of Just Security. He's also a law professor at NYU. Ryan, we're used to October surprises in our presidential campaigns, usually involve something out of opposition research. But as you wrote in a New York Times op-ed, there's a new threat potentially this year from Attorney General Bill Barr. I want to get into some of the specific possible ways he might do that in just a moment. But overall, how worried are you and how worried should we be that this Attorney General will overstep or trash norms and try to become his own October surprise? And why would he do that other than just wanting Trump to win?
So I think that the problem here is that he's already signaled very much that it's in his mind that he does want to go forward down this path. He's already said that he hopes for the report to be released this summer. When asked under pressure from the House Judiciary Committee if he could guarantee that he would abide by the DOJ policy that says they should not take no public actions in the run-up to the election, he just said no. When he was interviewed by a conservative news outlet, a radio program, he said, oh, you know, this policy is just prudential. That was his word, so that he could, as Attorney General, essentially waive it. So it does look as though this is his objective.
That report that you referenced that came up during the House question, I think is the Durham report related to the Russia investigation, specifically investigating the investigators. How could Barr weaponize that? What would it look like? Questionable criminal charges? He, a la James Comey, announces an investigation. He issues a report saying something untoward happened but doesn't do anything. How might that play out?
So it's difficult to know in part because the Durham investigation has become so sprawling. It was supposed to be in part about whether or not there was political bias or illegitimate reasons for launching the investigation into Russia in the 2016 election, or the relationship between the Trump campaign and Russia. So there's one kernel to the Durham investigation that could be legitimate, and people should be prepared for it, which is the leak of the Russian ambassador's phone call with Michael Flynn during the transition. But the question is, how does Barr then weaponize it? If they've got this one little bit about one particular official at the time, and then they blow it out, or he misrepresents it the very way that he misrepresented the Mueller investigation and the Mueller report, I think that's one thing to be concerned about.
There's also the possibility Barr tries to make hay out of the unmasking of Trump associates, which is a story that seems to be on a loop at Fox News and within the Senate Intel Committee, but viewers of this program may not know much about it. It's the one being led by John Bash, the U.S. Attorney in West Texas. If you could, give us the Reader's Digest version of what this is all about and whether and how Barr might use it.
So it sounds suspicious to say the words unmasking, but that's the technical term used. So he can already begin to say, look, what did they do? They unmasked an American citizen, Michael Flynn, and other Trump associates, which means that U.S. officials were concerned about intercepted communications with Russian operatives, Russian agents, and then if an American citizen's name was redacted, they might say, I need to know from the intelligence community who is that American so we can understand the threat. And one of the pieces that was spun up that was so supposedly sinister is the idea that Michael Flynn's name was unmasked in his very nefarious phone conversation during the transition with the Russian ambassador, which he lied about to the FBI. And we've learned from the Washington Post it was never unmasked. And we've learned from testimony before the House Intelligence Committee, his name was already in the report that was prepared by the FBI. So there was no unmasking of him on this legendary phone call. Yet, for the Fox News audience and for others, it's still as though Biden's name was on the list of people who asked for an unmasking and Susan Rice's name was there. Not about that phone call.
And then there's Ukraine. Earlier this year, Barr said that he was setting up a process to receive and analyze data that Rudy Giuliani got about Ukraine, which of course is really code for Hunter Biden. I didn't realize a private citizen could, and an attorney for the president could do that, get that kind of access. But is that something we should be watching out for as well, that unusual relationship between Giuliani, Ukraine, and Barr?
Absolutely. So I think there are two avenues that Giuliani has gotten traction with, which one is, strangely enough, traction right into the Justice Department, where Bill Barr seems to have set up a unique avenue for getting information on Ukraine for the president's personal attorney to provide it. And then the second is, on the Senate side, some Senate Republicans, not all, but Ron Johnson and Senator Grassley, are doing an investigation of Hunter Biden and Ukraine, the very thing that President Trump was impeached for, the very thing that even a majority of the Senate, including a handful of Republicans, found that the impeachment lawyers from the House had proven the case that Trump had engaged in wrongdoing by this spun-up conspiracy theory of Hunter Biden and Joe Biden in Ukraine. And that is another avenue for Giuliani to people like Senator Johnson. And I say it's not all Republicans because there's also reporting that Senator Burr, who at the time was the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, a Republican, warned Senator Johnson that he would be a victim and a conduit of Russian disinformation on this. But he's plowing full speed ahead.
Finally, Ryan, is there anything that can be done to stop or prevent this? I'm afraid I know the answer before I ask the question. What can Democrats on the Hill or the DNC or the Biden campaign be doing proactively? And since we're talking about this now and talking about how so much of this appears to be weak tea, what makes you so sure that it's going to have a huge impact if Barr takes any of these steps, as opposed to the public seeing it for what you and I seem to agree that it is, which is Barr overstepping?
I think that's right. I think they might be overplaying their hand. And if anything, as long as the public or a large segment of the public understands what's going on, it's actually much to the discredit of Senator Johnson, Senator Grassley, and Senator Graham, that I think they're actually going down with the ship, which is the Trump ship. And one of the most important points of leverage on William Barr is, in all likelihood, inside of that Justice Department. So when Andrew Weissman and I wrote our op-ed in the New York Times, we ended by saying there are models of great behavior for whistleblowers inside the Justice Department in the Trump era if they are asked to participate in something that is unethical or a violation of their oath to the Constitution, which this looks like it's going to be. And that is that they can speak to Congress under subpoena, they can resign and write, or otherwise communicate with the American public directly. And there are other ways in which they can report it or speak with whistleblower organizations. So I think that's one way that this gets either stopped, or if Bill Barr does try to weaponize it in the run-up to the election, it could be countered by, patriots, essentially, people committed to the rule of law inside the Justice Department that speak out against it.
We're less than 90 days from the election, but boy, what a long 90 days it sounds like it's going to be. Ryan Goodman, co-editor-in-chief of Just Security, also a law professor at NYU. Ryan, really appreciate a few minutes. Thanks.
Thank you.
And up next, an update on the COVID outbreak, including how the virus is now totally upending college football.